Yo, what is up? I'm Kumo Akemi, and I'm coming at you with some thoughts, final thoughts on the Enies Water 7. And I'm now kind of allowing myself to look low enough on the list over here, but not look any lower to see that Netflix has it also labeled as CP9 and Goodbye Going Merry. They gave that one a whole 19 episodes. My goodness. Well, that that being said, very awkwardly so, I've quite enjoyed these episodes. I let myself get kind of caught up in the numbers for a while, so I kind of lose track of everything, and I hadn't realized just how long it's been since we started this whole thing. Because if we really think about it, this dates back all the way to Aokiji showing up and attacking our crew and trying to take Robin at the time. Or was he trying to take her? Maybe he was just trying to kill her, but he obviously wasn't. After all of this, we know better than that. That being said, it's been a long while. And so I was trying to think about like how to break this down, sort of like just an overall feeling, like, hey, I think this was real fun. I rank it higher than a couple arcs that we've had already. I would definitely, honestly, I'm sorry, Usopp, but to this day, I think Syrup Village is probably Foxy Games is my least favorite arc. Syrup Village is my second least favorite arc. But that being said, they all have their own moments, right? But this is, I would say it's up there. Up until Skypiea, I didn't think you could probably top it. And then they followed that up because they followed it up with Foxy, and it's like, oh my god, right? And then they started with Enies Lobby, and so I guess we'll start here. I feel like we got a lot of misdirects, right? Like, we start with a simple task. Luffy needs a shipwright. And so, yeah. And then we find out that, oh, hey, we're going to be going to Water 7. And there's a lot of shipwrights there. It's perfect. All the stuff that we got in Skypiea, we can use and get a lot of money, repair our ship, and bring us a new shipwright. It all seems hunky-dory. And then we get there. And on the way there is when we encounter Aokiji. And so I feel like this is the like moment where it's just like Robin experienced true camaraderie in the Foxy Games. As annoying as that arc is, that is one thing I think that it actually had going for it. It showed how hard everybody was willing to fight for each other. And so I believe Robin experienced that. She witnessed it firsthand. They even fought to get her back on their team. She seemed just like so chill with the idea of, well, I'm moving on once they picked me, But like, they got her back, and then they encounter Aokiji. And instead of running, Luffy risked his life to save her, and he nearly died. She technically nearly died too by being frozen, And I think that really shook her because she realized for the first time she cared for the people around her. And now that we've, of course, had all those flashbacks, we know for a fact, ever since her childhood, she's never had anyone looking out for her that didn't die horribly a long time ago, And even then, they were all like protecting her and doing for her own good in her by keeping her mom away from her and not explaining things correctly or properly, or and it was just like, it was really frustrating for her and very unfortunate. Anyway, so basically she finds herself at a point where she cares for everybody around her, and they come across Water 7, and in retrospect we have more knowledge, and we can say that more unfortunately they blunder into a CP9 operation that is ongoing in Water 7. These guys want the blueprints. Oh boy, I don't want screensavers. Blah. Anyways, they stumble. You doing okay, bub? Turbo's like way over there, and I'm kind of concerned about him. Anyways, they stumble into these plans, and Aokiji is aware of it, I guess, because he essentially was like, "Yo, you can use Robin, and frame, essentially get what you want and frame the Straw Hats for it." And of course, at the time, none of it's making sense, so this is all like knowledge we get later. And she agrees with the stipulation that they don't do the Buster Call, which is like that really powerful military attack with like, I think it was like 5 ships and like a couple vice admirals and a whole bunch of stinking folks come along and just basically obliterate an area, aka her hometown, O'Hara. I keep wanting to say Ohana, but I think it's O'Hara. Anyways, I digress. She leaves them. She doesn't explain herself, which we have now learned is a problem because Luffy is, he's not simple, but he's simple, but he also he needs some explanation, right? So like he doesn't do a lot of complicated conversation, but at the same time he is very emotionally like in on folk, he seems to always know or have a vibe about somebody, like just the proper way to be around them, like just like I don't know. I could go off on a tangent about how like he essentially. I recently went back and watched the first time he has an encounter with Miss All Sunday, aka now Robin, and he for an instant is like, oh, she's a good person, because he didn't like really understand the situation, and he only got angry at her. Well, he got frustrated when she took his hat, but I mean, he really only got angry when she blew up Ingram, which later we realized that she didn't. So, like up until then, like he wasn't getting any vibes from her. And even at the end, like he ended up being confused because she was offering them the eternal log posts that would allow them to skip Little Garden. So like from the very beginning, like Luffy's had this like connection with all the people around around him, and essentially with Robin. And I'm sorry for rambling about that. I was just kind of wrapping back around to the problem with not explaining why you're leaving. And even I believe Usopp has a line to Robin later where it's like, you can't just leave the crew without permission from your captain, and especially Luffy. And if you're not honest about it, he knows, because he just like he vibes with you. He doesn't need the words, but he can just judge the aura around you or something. I swear, he's like he's got his own thing going on there. I've got a lot of theories. I don't know how like symbolic the show is gonna get, but really, he's very biblical right now to me. I'll try not to go into that because that's like a whole tangent and super nerdy and kind of dumb, and I don't have a lot to go with yet. But so Robin leaves, and it just also frames them, and it causes a whole slew of issues with the shipwrights, aka Galila, and Icebarg, the mayor of Water 7, as well as Polly, the leader of Galila, and who is working with a bunch of CP9 undercover agents. Like, oh my gosh, that whole thing, I swear to God, I had a whole arc with Lucy, because when they introduced him as a guy who was super shy and only spoke through the ventriloquism with the dove on his shoulder, like, my God, I loved him. I love the idea of that character, and to this, and even to this day, I'm really frustrated with him because I don't like him now as a character because of everything he's done and everything. But I still love that aspect of him because clearly he came up with that cover story, right? Unless it's established later that somebody else was like, "Yo, I want you to be a ventriloquist with a dove," right? And he's just like, "Well, whatever, I'm getting paid." But the fact is, currently, in my mind, Lucy made a mental decision. Away with ye, screensavers. Lucy made a mental decision to be a ventriloquist shipwright. And oh my God, that was so much fun. And I had no idea we were going to go in such a wild direction with those guys when they were introduced too. Granted, they were given such unique personalities, it almost felt essential that you would either fight against them or fight alongside them. And we actually get all of that in this story, because it's like you end up fighting alongside Polly against Kaku and Khalifa and Lucy, and I guess the dub in parentheses. Yeah, no, so yeah, we got that whole thing going on for us. While on the side, the whole reason behind us getting to Water 7 in the first place is we need a shipwright and we need to fix the Mary. We learn that the Mary is given more essentially a death sentence, or they're just like, look, she's terminal. You can't fix her. Her keel is damaged. It's inevitable, more inevitable before you get to the next island, that she's gonna sink. Hey, bub, you doing okay? Go around. You went to the wrong side of the door. It's so it's like beyond obvious that like she doesn't have long for her life, and she's been looking it for a while. And I actually love how good they are with the canon repairs that Usopp does to her, because it shows how much he loves her, and he's putting, and all the time that he's putting into her. Like, you never think about it towards the beginning. He's just like in the background during a scene, hammering away while something is happening or the characters are talking. But like literally, he's patching her together, and by then she's just like, looks like a zombie almost, and yeah, so learning that she's not long for the world is not good, and it does not do well with the relationship between Usopp and Luffy, because Usopp, I believe, has always stood on an unsteady foot because he is insecure and he doesn't feel like he measures up to everybody on the crew. But I think at this point it's very important for him to realize that his strength is not what makes him fit in, he doesn't have to body slam a sumo wrestler to be worthy of them. Like, he is a brilliant sniper. Like, the sniping he does in these arcs, and like the burning of the world government flag, getting Spandam, right when they're about to cross through the gate kind of thing, like, oh my God, like, Usopp has earned himself so much street cred. And it was like the act of putting the mask on after he, separates from the Straw Hats, kind of gave him the first chance to like really grab hold of like some courage and like do stuff. Like, I think it gave him that like, oh, I'm like, I can do more things because I'm not me. I'm acting, and it gave him the confidence. Or, well, no, I think he always had the confidence. It's just like, it's hard for him to find it. He has a lot of, like I said, self-doubt. So, and by mentioning the mask and therefore Sogi King, I have to briefly bring it back to the fight, which to this day, I'm going to say was just a very hard thing to watch, because Usopp was self-destructing, and I don't know if everybody has had a friend like this, but there's a person in, I think, a lot of people's lives who goes through a time where instead of accepting help, they lash out and they say and do hurtful things to other people, so in hopes of getting something like said back to them equally so, or even a fist thrown back so they can get into a fight to feel something or whatever. So like the fact that Usopp challenges Luffy to win the ship when he could have just asked for her after wanting to leave, and then he forces Luffy to beat the S out of him. Not like Luffy could go easy on him, because Usopp didn't let him, because it's like, I feel like he wanted to hurt. He felt like the Mary falling apart was in essence his fault, because he's been repairing her this entire time, and she was a gift to them by his longtime friend Kaya. God, it's been so long, I almost forgot her name. And it's just like it feels like the Mary is a big part of him in essence. And so if she's not doing well, he perceives it as he's not doing his part for the crew, right? Wow, long way of getting around to so that whole dynamic. I didn't see coming. It was heartbreaking, and then it just like allowed for a very interesting arc for Usopp to find his strength and his courage, and then almost at the end, he literally was just like forced to swallow his pride and apologize to Luffy and beg to come back. And honestly, that shows to me, at least, that he's not fully, obviously, mature yet, but he's come a long way because, like, he wanted so bad to just pretend all of it never had happened and just be accepted back onto the crew playfully and just forget about it, you know? And it's just like, no, you know, you have to accept your part in it because you forced Luffy to be the captain and do his part. And if you force him to do it the first time around, you can't accept, like, you can't think that he's not going to do it the second time around. And like Zoro was saying, and it's just like, I love that. He's such a great first mate. He puts his foot down and he's like, I don't want to work under a captain who, you know, who's not strong. You know, you have to have guidelines, you know, and follow them, you know, and you can't, you know, balk on them just because, you know, it hurts your feels. So he was kind of guiding Luffy in these decisions, and while all the others are more emotional, I think they all more or less kind of understood that, you know, like up at the end where it looked like Luffy, like where Usopp wasn't coming, you know, like Luffy was sweating, but he was, you know, he was like set to be like, this is the way it's gotta be, you know. Love that. Oh my gosh, I love it, love it, love it. Whew. What else? What else? I made a long list of like thoughts about this stuff and then I left them downstairs. That was very helpful. But I have another area that I should touch on real quick while it's just fleeting across my mind. We've learned while through these episodes a bit more of the devil fruits stuff, like knowledge, right? We encountered a elephant sword that was essentially a sword. Hi, buddy. Hi. Ugh. Turbo came over and decided to give me some company. But where was I? Oh, yeah. So we learned that there's a guy named Dr. Vegapunk, I think. And they create all sorts of weird combinations of fruits and things. Like objects that eat fruits, like that the whole idea just is so stupid, but you know what, hey, whatever, I guess it can work. And he's also got like a long list of fruits that he's been studying. And what else have we learned about the devil fruits now? All right, you can't have more than one because if you get two, then the devil tears you apart. I might not be getting all of that right. That was a mix of CP9 folk having a conversation, and one of them being like more literal and sensical about it, and the other one being more about like the fairy tale they've heard about them. But in essence, I understand you can't have more than one, which is good because I've been kind of curious about that. What else have we learned? Chopper had so many screensavers. I have a lot to say. Chopper had some issues also in this arc. He popped 3 rumble balls and went mad crazy. And while he did defeat a CP9 person, he terrorized a lot of our folk. And then he was like laying around for a while afterwards, which obviously means that it probably wasn't very easy on his tiny little body. I'm wondering if we're going to touch on that again anytime soon. Yeah, because that was kind of traumatic. We kind of glazed right over it, and they said, "Oh, well, we'll tell you what happened later." But we, as an audience, don't see that unless it was in one of the filler episodes that I skipped. In which case, I don't know if that would have counted as seeing what they talked about, anyways, because it wouldn't have been canon. Oh well, I digress. What else about devil fruits? Well, we saw a couple people actually eat them. Khalifa and Kaku. And Khalifa got the like it was like a soap fruit that affected other folks and made them terrifying to look at. Poor Sanji. And then Kaku got the giraffe fruit. And man, he is so much. He really loves giraffes. Giraffes are so cool, you guys. You have no idea. I love how like very vehement he was about that once he'd eaten it. I don't think he would have felt that way beforehand. He did have a little bit of an anger problem for like the first episode after he ate it. I misinterpreted it as him having eaten a carnivorous fruit because they have also established, which I'm now remembering, that carnivore Zoans are more violent and like crazy and scary, aka Lucy, who turns into like a giant leopard. I always have to stop on that. Why did they make him look like a cheetah? Oh well. Yeah, so we've learned a lot about fruits, actually. It's very interesting. And also Buster Calls. We briefly saw Robin's mom, which is pretty darn cool. She's a beautiful lady. I felt really bad about that. I'm not really keen on that kind of parenting, to be honest, where you have to give up the love of like all everybody for knowledge and then just leave your kid with a whole bunch of old dudes. Well, no, not really. She was with her aunt or no, her uncle, I think. Well, obviously they weren't that good because her aunt was a flaming bee. I digress. What else? What else? Oh yeah, so obviously the storming of Enies Lobby, it was probably the craziest, most insane thing. Because when you like you zoom back out on that in retrospect and you look at like what happened or introspect, I don't know, I'm getting my words all mixed up. But when you look back on what happened and like the entirety of it, it's insane. They show up at the doorstep and Luffy, of course, flinging himself in first. They're like, "Yo, do you know where you are, bro?" And he's like, "No, I'm storming the castle." And from that point on, it was mayhem, and I loved it, especially the introduction of those two giants. I don't remember their names, but that was such a great callback to little island little. I can't remember the name of that. I'm brain farting so bad on it. But Little Garden. It's a great callback to Brogy and Dory at Little Garden. And the fact that these guys essentially got used by the Marines and misled so that they stayed in service for 50 years, like guarding the gates, thinking that they were protecting their captains. And it's just like, at that point in time, it feels so good to see them learn the truth and then turn and then around and start beating the crap out of the Marines, because we've been learning so much in these last few arcs of how not black and white the world is. And essentially her Robin's folk drop like this big bomb on, like not literal bomb, but I mean like they're like, "Hey, can we theorize before you kill all of us?" "Yeah, thanks." And then they theorize that 800 years ago, when, at the end of the Void Century, essentially, the Marines were the only thing that were around along with these poneglyphs. And that these poneglyphs were actually written by like people who are no longer around, who are essentially the enemy of the Marines. And that's why the Marines don't want folks to read it, because they're weapons or something, or instructions to create something powerful that that the world government doesn't want used against it. I think I would say Marines this whole time. I don't think it's entirely interchangeable, but I think it is. Essentially, I just meant that the world government's been around for 800 years. And it's kind of weird that they don't want folks to know the true history, right? So, yeah, so by the time you get around all the way back to this and you see that, like the Marines are, using these giants and it just like accusing Robin of the Buster call to her island when she was just a kid and they were already going to do it. It's just like, oh yeah, we'll just, blame all of it on this one kid. And now, in essence, after this raid on Enies Lobby, even though it was a Buster call, the government is saying that it was the Mugiwara people who went in there and attacked and burned everything. So it's interesting the things that the government does and then blames on other folk, but still professes to be good, and then just so blatantly accuses the other folks of being evil about, even though they know the truth about it. Like it's baffling to me that they can operate that way. It's very frustrating, to be honest. What else did we get this season? Oh, yeah. So we also got the reunion of Kobe and Luffy, wrapped up in the whole learning about Garp and Luffy's lineage. That's pretty cool, honestly. I knew about it because of the live action. I watched that, and they dropped that bomb at the end of episode 4. But it was still really nice to see how it was implemented in the anime, and I'm assuming it was probably the same, more or less, for the manga. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was slightly different. Feel free to let me know. I'm not going to read the manga. I got too frustrated after the first 2 chapters because of them spelling Zoro's name as Zolo. I can't get over that. I would never get over that. But that was really fun to see. I think that Kobe has a long way to go, and I think he's just really young and starry-eyed and still too naive. He still thinks of the Marines as being a good thing, and he's not jaded yet, and that's worrying to me because he rushed across the Grand Line, essentially, to go see Luffy when he had said previously he wanted to become somebody great first. But he's like, yo, no, I want to see Luffy first. And then so they go and see him, and it's kind of just like a little kind of squint at his personality type, like he wants to get things quickly, but he's like a child running from window to window at of shops that he likes, but not realizing that other people are taking their time, and he's just so excited about it, right? So it was nice of Luffy to humor him. But I mean, they're so weak still. I mean, he learned how to do the shave, which is pretty cool, which is just moving really fast. But that's just so easily overcome at this point by Luffy. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Pretty cool to see Garp again. I'm really not sure what to think about his character, because in the anime he shows up because he knows that Kobe knows Luffy, so they must learn at some point, obviously. I don't remember if he learned. No, he knew Kobe knew Luffy in the training episodes we watched. So yeah, he brings them to see him, knowing that Luffy's a pirate, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, no worries about it. You're my grandson, so I'll just tell headquarters that whatever, it's cool." And then his bro is like, "Yo, you can't do that. So let's just pretend that they got away." And then he has to come back and attack Luffy again in a couple days. Oops. In a couple days' time, because he was told to by the headquarters. No, he was told to by Aokiji, who was still there. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now who's hypocrite? Because Aokiji was literally standing back to back with Robin with this small wall between them during a party, chatting with her, and he didn't do anything. And so he went and found Garp instead and told him to do something. You know, like the Marines are so like such hypocrites. Oh my gosh. I'm sure I'm gonna forget something from this arc. I mean, everybody had a moment to shine. Sanji got a new kick, flaming kick. It's pretty awesome. He also did some more espionage. I swear to God, I have like my theory. It hasn't been dissuaded yet about him like having some history, and because nobody important has ever seen Sanji's face. Like Crocodile was like, oh, it's Mr. Prince, you know, don't know whatever, and like his little otter guy never got a picture of Sanji, and then Mr. Two, aka Bonchan, he never got to touch Sanji's face, so he didn't learn Sanji's face, and then for the the wanted poster updates, again no one's actually gotten a picture of Sanji. It's actually like I know it's played off as a joke that like you know the guy didn't have a cap. He had the cap on the camera, and therefore they had to hand sketch it. But I really feel like there's something to it because like to this day nobody official knows what Sanji looks like, but they know essentially what the in quotation Straw Hat's pet looks like. Good job, Chopper. You got yourself a bounty. I think it was 50 berry. I think. Yeah. Either way, good on you, Mike. Yeah, so Sanji, still a mystery to me. And Nami, she really came in clutch. She struggles in her battles because, you know, fighting is not her, you know, forte, and that's totally fine. Like they've established on the show as like, if you have a specialty, it's okay if it's not combat. Y'all, like you know, she's our navigator, and Usopp is our sniper, and Chopper is our doctor. He has a lot of expectations for himself, and I think that he's going to need to work through them because, like, you know, he literally made himself turn into a beast because he wanted to prove himself and do that something for everybody, and he bit off more than he could chew, you know, literally with that rumble ball. And someone's got to have a talk with that little guy, you know. We've now had that talk with Usopp and with Nami. She had that with Usopp back in Skypiea in the flashback when she asked him to make her a weapon or something. It was just like, you know, I'm aware that, you know, we're not like the main tanks, you know, we're not there to fight, but you know, we need to be there when it can count. And Chopper needs to learn that like he can be there when it counts for being a doctor, you know? He doesn't need to be a monster to, you know, and smack people around. But it is pretty cool that he can do that. And he came in clutch and he saved Zoro, you know, way back when Zoro got stuck in a chimney. So, you know, good on Chopper this season. And Nami for coming in and backing up Sanji when he failed to fight Khalifa. That also is gonna have to come back around at some point, right? Like Nami really, you know, got after him. Was like, you know, you are such a softie. You need to harden up. I'm coming out with all sorts of things that aren't supposed to be innuendos when it comes to Sanji and women, but hey, but no, Sanji needs to either learn how to hit a woman. I know it sounds horrible saying that, or like Nami was saying, it's just like learn to run, because you can't just get the crap beaten out of you and then die. And he's like, well, I don't want to die. And she's like, well, you're gonna need to figure that out. Whew, boy. All right. What else has gone on in this season? Well, another thing that was super important was learning a bit more about Whitebeard and Shanks and Ace and Blackbeard and by proxy the world government, because now we knew, I think at the end of Alabasta it was that we saw Mary Jo or whatever the place, and Blackbeard had a, no, it wasn't at the end of Alabasta, I think it was at the end of Skypiea. He had an emissary go to the Mary Jo place and essentially vie for Blackbeard to become a warlord of the sea. And he was like, my boss has something planned. And then we witnessed him try to get Luffy before Luffy got hit by a knock-up string. I had to remember what it was called. And then went up to Skypiea. Oh no, it was at the end of Alabasta. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting all my arcs like really conflated here. But yeah, so at the end of Alabasta, he had the emissary there and he tried to get Luffy, but then Luffy blasted up to Skypiea. Yeah, that was in the Jaya storyline. It was kind of a little wiggle room in there. And so at the end of this arc, sorry for taking my time to get there, we now have seen Blackbeard encounter Ace. And Ace did not do a very good job against Blackbeard. Blackbeard has some crazy power, and the power of darkness, I guess. And Yami, I had to stop and mentally facepalm because I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! A long time ago, and they were like, Yami Yugi, right? And I'm like, oh, the hell, that's funny. It's like, that's just the name of the one dude or whatever. And then it's just like, very belatedly, I'm like, oh no. Obviously, they meant Shadow Yugi. And so now I know what Yami means. That being said, yeah, I'm concerned for Ace. It was a kind of an ambiguous ending, but it wasn't a happy ending, and his hat was left on the ground, which insinuates that Blackbeard won. And Blackbeard said that he was going to capture Luffy for his bounty initially. So if he won against Ace, that makes me worry what he's going to do. Granted, he offered several times to have Ace join his crew because he apparently legitimately likes Ace and thinks he's a really good, strong pirate. But Ace kept saying no, so I'm wondering if he's going to give Ace to the government or if he's going to use him as a bargaining chip against Whitebeard or Shanks, who has also dropped some bombs on us. And so we've learned that the scratches on Shanks' face is from Blackbeard, and Blackbeard apparently was very duplicitous in the way it came about, even though Shanks was trying to be real careful around him. And Shanks has gone so far as to beg Whitebeard to make Ace back off because he didn't think he should go up against Blackbeard. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So, yeah, I don't, honestly, where we're at, I'm not sure what to expect because we've established that our log post is now set to go to the next area, which is in fact Fishman Island. And it's in the middle of some kind of like crazy area. I'm guessing their world's version of like the Bermuda Triangle or something. And so we need to go there somehow, an island underwater in the middle of some crazy area. But we've now established there's this other stuff going on. That being said, I understand that Oda is really good at just being like, oh, hey, remember those two characters? Here's one random episode, and then I'll bring them back in 200 episodes and then have another one. So, like, our luck, and I'm already very cross because, you know, Oda, I bet we're not going to find out what happened to Ace for a while. But maybe I'll be wrong. I'm pleasantly surprised otherwise, you know? Yeah. I talked a lot about these arcs, but I really, really, truly enjoyed them. And I left off Frankie. Best, but, you know, but not last. Or last, but, what did they say? last but not least, yeah, sorry, it took me a while to pull that one out. I went through such an arc with that character. I have like never felt so many different things about somebody, from just despising them for what the Frankie crew did to Usopp, and by extension our crew, by stealing their money and then rushing away and spending 200 million berries. And that was really frustrating to me. But they then, of course, give you Frankie's backstory, and you learn about his relationship with Icebarg and Tom, who is a fishman, and he's like a really gentle soul who like builds ships, and he built the ship that Gold Roger sailed on, and the government wanted to punish him for it, but he made a bargain to create the sea train in exchange for his freedom. And they essentially agreed to it. And then Frankie's battleships were used to frame them at the end of it all. But rather than allow Frankie to go down with Icebarg, and, you know, Tom essentially took he essentially, oh God, I love this. He's such a boss, man. He was like, yo, the good thing that I did, can it, instead of us expunging my record of making a ship for the King of the Pirates, let it expunge, you know, their record, so that, you know, Iceberg and Frankie can walk away and be okay. And the judge accepted that. And it's just like, it's so sad that Frankie then went and tried to stop the train. And basically, he damaged his body trying to stop the train, and rebuilt it to be a cyborg. Icebarg cyborg. Yeah, he like built a body essentially, and it's kind of ridiculous. It really is like leaning over the line of just like, you know, absurdity in this world, that he can like open his chest and there are 3 bottles of cola, is kind of ridiculous to me. But at this point, honestly, we've seen so many things. Maybe he can be a cyborg that has like all these things in him, you know? And he proved his worth to us by helping in the raid against Enies Lobby to get Robin back. He gave her words of advice, encouraged her to, you know, believe in her friends. And he quite literally saved her life like 2 times at least towards the end there. He was a real champ. So by the end, when you learn that he's got a wanted poster and his crew is worried for him, and they want Luffy to invite him onto the crew, which I thought was really cool that they went to ask, you know. It's like, at that point I was like, okay, fine. I guess it's okay if he is the you know, shipwright that Luffy ends up taking, you know. Granted, I really do have a crush on Polly. But Luffy's response, of course, was very Luffy, and so on par. It's like, yeah, I already decided that, you know, like, and it makes sense. It's like, at that point in time, Frankie's been with them all through Enies Lobby and done nothing wrong, and, you know, he built them a ship, for F's sake, you know. So it's nice that he's joining the crew. I think he will fit in just fine, and I look forward to seeing that. You know, that new dynamic. I guess we'll get one more boss battle in every arc now, because we'll have Frankie there. Gosh. I don't know what else. I wanted to be more organized about this. I think I've talked about everything of consequence. And if I forgot it, I'm so sorry. But I am looking forward to new episodes. And I hope that y'all are too. If I do this correctly and upload this correctly, there will be a new reaction tomorrow with new episodes of the anime. So I hope you tune in. And these screensavers. And yes, until then, I will bid y'all adieu.